Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live coaching call with Nido Marketing. Hopefully, you had a really good break. This is the first coaching call we're having of 2020, and we're moving into step 3 now of our 12 steps to Montessori marketing. And today we have a guest that's going to open up selling Montessori, which is one of those things that we struggle with as Montessorians. How do we really get parents to, once they come in the door, to sign up? Right? And so that process can look really, it can be long and drawn out, or it can be quick and short and sweet. So we're going to chat a little bit about that. We have Arshia here from Aldea Montessori School. Arshia, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And to our live attendees, so if you've got questions at all, feel free to chat them in. I'll have my eyes on the chat during our conversation, and I'll be sure to ask the questions if they come up. But Aldea, Arshia, you've had 2 roles at Aldea Montessori, right?
Yes.
And so your journey started 10 years ago.
It did. I started at Aldea as a prospective parent. I had heard about it from a friend of mine who had her daughter come to the school for preschool. And I was at that time, a new mom. Well, not so new, but I had a 2-year-old, and I was ready for him to start socializing and ready to go back to work part-time. So I was looking for something that would offer him a meaningful entry into childcare. And I went to, I think, one of these daycares close by at my house, and he attended for 3 days, and he was crying and I was crying in the car, and it was just an unpleasant experience. And I came for a tour, and our head of school, who's still our head of school, conducted my tour, and I still remember being blown away by what the classroom looked like and by all of the things she said to me on the tour that were possible for my son to be doing even at that age. And that's when my journey actually began as a parent at the school. I started when he was 2, and he continued through their kindergarten program, and then he moved on, and my daughter started at the age of 2 when her brother was 6, and she continued through the kindergarten year as well. And then I just completely was devoted to the school as a parent, and I eventually started working here shortly after that.
Yeah, and so you've been an administrator for almost 2 years now at Aldea.
Yes, absolutely. So while my children were still enrolled, I was volunteering, I was attending workshops, I was just slowly and steadily gaining more and more knowledge about the philosophy, and I was making connections with the staff, and the parents and the teachers were just so willing to share all their knowledge with me that I then became, the head of the parent board, and I was doing fundraising, and I was doing various parent education opportunities, not teaching, but actually facilitating those. And then I became the champion for opening an elementary program. And so all of these years of just working closely with our head of school and the staff and the parents, I think really prepped me to starting on in this role as the administrator, which I took on 2 years ago almost.
Mm-hmm. Right, so a 10-year journey now.
Yes.
And Aldea is one of our founding Nido members as well. So you guys have been with us since the start.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's made a tremendous difference in the way we reach out to prospective families, the way we communicate, the way we position ourselves, and we're much more aware of what the needs are and how we can fulfill them.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to actually start with Arshia sharing a little bit more about her perspective as a parent and that journey going through, really making the choice to enroll your children into a Montessori program, and how you use your experience as a parent now as an administrator who is, working with prospective parents and really that enrollment. And you guys currently have a waiting list. Is that right?
We do. So when I started as a parent, I'm not Montessori trained. I have, familiarity with the Montessori philosophy now that I did not have, 10 years ago. And it was really intimidating at first because it seemed like it was something foreign. It was almost like a cult of all of the terminology that was used at that time was definitely confusing and overwhelming. I didn't know what my son, when he would tell me about the things he would work with in the classroom, and some of the parent education nights, it was not so much clear to me as to what he was actually doing at school, because he would never bring any work home that was tangible. There would be works that came home, but they were not worksheets, or they were not finished products of things that he had done. So it was definitely something that a journey that has been enlightening for me, because now with all of the experiences that I've had with him and my daughter, I can actually put myself in the same boat as prospective parents when they come to tour or when they come to inquire about enrollment. They have all of these questions, and they're wanting to know what exactly their child does all day and why is the material called to work. And I think one of the things that I think my position helps me do is bridge that gap. It helps me, my personal experiences and stories of how my children have experienced the same things that their children are going through, whether it's current families talking about, well, how do we do, how does toilet training work, or how does this work, or what is the pink tower, things like that. I don't necessarily talk about it from a theory perspective, but I definitely talk about it from a parent perspective, which is very relatable. It resonates with the families, the current families, and with the prospective families as well, when they talk about their children coming to this new environment and this new method of teaching that is still very, very much alien, so to say, to families that are not familiar with Montessori.
Right. Well, and I think your business background really gives you a different lens, especially as an administrator now, where you can pare back the philosophy and the theory and get to the heart of it, the heart of what parents really are asking for.
Yes, absolutely. I think that was one of the strong points for me as well, as coming from a background of business and marketing. I definitely have seen that, like you were mentioning, we now have a wait list. We were not full for many years. And then when I started in 2018, we shortly went to being full in all of the classrooms, and we developed a significant wait list, which we still have. And I think one of the things that has helped us do that is to have the right words when we advertise, when we talk to parents, when we answer the phones, just having those right words, which makes it approachable for parents who are not fully familiar with what Montessori has to offer, and B, also making it affordable and making it accessible to those parents. Because one of the main things that we are trying to do as a school, our value proposition is Montessori for every child. And we talk about that even if I think my personal perception was that it's for the affluent, it's for people who can actually afford private education. But now we have so many scholarships, and we have so many ways of subsidizing tuition for families, that we actually are bringing diversity into our school. We're bringing children from all different backgrounds and ethnicities and populations to our school, because it is something that is accessible to all. And again, just the fact that parent communication is much more stronger now than it was previously, I think it's my personal I think motto is to bridge that gap and to make it a connection for families, that it's not just a school, it's a community. And we talk to parents that way, we talk to prospective families that way, and we really drive home that concept of it's available to everyone. We make it approachable in the terminology we use, the words we use.
Mm-hmm. Right. So let's go back 10 years ago, right, when you were trying to make that decision. Can you speak a little bit about what attracted you to Aldea, and also what helped you make that decision? Because I think, for our members, it's really valuable to hear about your experience, because those elements of what helped you make the decision to enroll can be sprinkled through our processes and admission, and really our sales pitch.
Absolutely. I think, like I said, we had toured other places as well. And my son had actually gone to another daycare for about 3 days. But I think the main thing for me when I walked into the classroom was the classroom itself was just displayed and set up in such a beautiful manner, and everything was accessible to him. It was at his level. And Donna, our head of school, she sat down with me and really talked me through what is possible for the child at this age. So she didn't talk to me about Montessori. She talked to me about what was possible for my son. And that personal dialogue which she had with me, and I think that's something that we should really stress with our families when we talk to them. we don't start talking to them about the features of Montessori right away, that this is what Montessori has to offer. We talk to them about how the child grows and develops and how we can tap into that. So that makes it really personal for a parent. If you're talking to me that my child can actually hold, not plastic, but real glass plates and real glass cups and take care of himself and actually, dress himself and take care of his environment, take care of plants and animals in the classroom. Those are things that are very compelling because it shows you that there is so much potential in your child, not that there is a method of teaching and a method of instruction that you need to be sold on. So I think talking to parents from the potential and from the point of view of their child is what is really the selling point for me in Montessori classrooms. It's, again, not about the classroom itself or about the materials and the works and the lessons. It's about the potential of each child. And that's which I continually strive to talk about when parents come in and when we have tours and when we have inquiries and phone calls. We really talk about each child and what's capable of each child and where that child is in his or her own development.
Right. And you're absolutely right. And the story that Qasim actually shared a few times throughout our coaching call is when he went to observe, one of the fears that came up for him is my child able to do this?
Right.
Children are there, they seem purposeful, they're kind, they're generous, and my child is like crazy. Like he's running all over the place. Can my child really do this? And I mean, I think you hit it so well, is if you can really speak to the parents about what their child is capable of doing, their child,
yes,
they're at.
Yes,
that's still Montessori principles, right? Because we
exactly
human potential, but to connect that with the parent and help them really envision what their child could do in a classroom.
Yes.
Because
that's exactly
regardless, right? They're walking into a classroom they've never, mainly never seen before, and it feels weird, because
right. It is. It can be overwhelming. It can be just, again, a foreign concept to actually see. But when one of our 3-step process where we have the parents come in and do an observation where they can actually see the classroom in functioning. That is, again, an essential part of our enrollment. And then also the meet the teacher, where the child and the teacher have a chance to interact. That in itself, all of these steps actually solidify the parents' belief in what we offer versus us telling them that. They actually get to see it for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're empowering them for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And another thing which I have seen us do over the years is we've reshaped our parent education nights to make them very, I want to say, the words we use and the kind of the presentations we do are very easy for parents to kind of digest and understand versus it being Montessori theory. We make it about what's in it for you, what you can do at home. Why is my child doing this, for instance? So we talk about very specific situations that they encounter at home versus making it about the Montessori theory in lectures.
Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely. So thinking about, your process, your decision-making process, were there any other items or things that really helped you make the decision of, yes, we're absolutely enrolling? Obviously, the feeling of, yes, my child can do this is a big one, but are there any others?
I think one of the things that really spoke strongly to me as well was the fact that it was such the invitation to volunteer, the invitation to be part of the community versus it being on a closed door. Like you could come in and observe at any time. You could stop by during the day with we have an infant program right now where parents are obviously, mothers can come in and nurse or can stop by to administer medication, things like that. I've always felt, even in my childhood, like my classroom or my experiences growing up, where that the school was a separate entity from the home. But I think that because we are so focused on following the child, that that relationship where it's not just a separate entity, but there was the opportunity to have a home visit if needed, or there was the opportunity to come in during the day and observe. Those were coming in to observe. When I went in to observe, I think 3 or 4 days after my son had started, I wanted to see how he was doing. I wanted to see, whether he was really fine. Like, they were telling me he was fine, but I wanted to see it from my own eyes. So having that, that really solidified the openness and the transparency really solidified my decision. And the fact that, again, it was an open door policy, and it was definitely something that was not, I didn't have to set an appointment to be able to come in and observe. I could come in and observe at any time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so welcoming parents into the journey.
Yes.
That makes your community such a magnetic place.
Yes, it absolutely does. And we when we talk to families when they come in for tours, we talk about the fact that we are a community, and we rely heavily on volunteers. We rely heavily on parent input. We rely heavily on, mentorship of old families and new families. We want you to, when you come in, have somebody that you can call and ask questions about, well, what does this mean? Or what do we do? We have cultural days where parents come in. When we do presentations about different things that we're learning, parents are invited into the classroom to make those presentations. So I think overall that connectedness is something that I've enjoyed as a parent, and I'm willing to now facilitate for other parents as well. Mm-hmm. And then also parents, when they talk to me, they say, well, how did your child do after they moved on? Or how did your children do once they moved on from Aldea? And both of my children are not at Montessori schools at the moment. They went to public elementary schools just because we did not have a quality Montessori program nearby, or logistically that would work for us. But being able to say that the foundation that they received here was so instrumental and so valuable in their journey now where they are. And one of the other things that parents ask about is the outcome. Well, how did they really do in reading, and how did they really do in math? Are they really, at the same level as their peers in elementary school? And I'm a testimony in the sense that I'm able to say, in many instances they're ahead. In many instances, they really are advanced compared to their peers because of the solid foundation they got that helped them develop at their own pace. So I think those things are also the kind of questions I receive. Well, how did they do after they left here? Or, what did they really learn to read by the age of 5? Or all of those things I'm able to narrate from my own personal experience.
Right. So the theme that I'm sensing here is, what's in it for me, right? From a parent perspective.
Yes.
What can you provide me and my
yes.
family for the benefits, but also what's the value, right? If I commit to your program, which you're telling me it's a 3 or a 6 or a 9, whatever programs you offer, year commitment, what happens after? Is the value
exactly. They want to have that trust in that their investment in you for the next 3 to 6 years is something that will reap benefits, and that's something that will be rewarded even later on in life. And that's, I think, something that we speak strongly about. We've had alumni come back and make presentations. We've had where do I go from here, meetings as well, where parents actually talk about the school choice for the next year. All of those discussions are just ongoing discussions and ongoing opportunities for parents to ask questions and to have those questions answered is essential, I think. And it's not a one way where we're disseminating information. It's always 2-way. And I think that's where and that's why I'm here, is because I had that ability to reach out and make those connections over the years and gain more knowledge. And that's why I was able to step into this role as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. Oh, that's beautiful. So from a parent perspective, having my child be able to really achieve what you're telling me is key. That.
Yes.
Speaking to what we will gain when we go through your entire program.
Right.
Also, do you speak to what parents will gain in the process?
Absolutely. We absolutely do. We talk about that. We're not just going to be working with your child, we work with your family. So we provide parents the ability to, reach out to us. We have a dialogue with Donna, which is our head of school. We have that once a month where parents come in and ask parenting questions. A lot of our workshops are related to parenting. We have throughout the year, we have different opportunities for parents to really just get a sense of outside of school, what they can do, what they're struggling with. So we definitely feel like parents leave here feeling more informed than they would at a typical school, where they would just, we say to them right at the tour, if you're looking for a place to just drop off and pick up, this is not the place. We provide more than that, and we expect more than that. So we ask for parents to really spend time getting to know the staff and the children and the community, and we invest the same amount of time getting to know them and their needs and their challenges and struggles. So we really are that community, and I think that's been one of our differentiating aspects from other schools, is that we pride ourselves on being a community.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And it sounds like it's very successful at this point.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. I would think so. And I enjoy it. And I think my conviction and my just the fact that I am, again, in the same boat as you. I'm not necessarily somebody who's talking at you. I'm talking with you, because I understand what it's like to be in that situation, is something that's valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So, Arshia, do you have some tips for those the administrators that don't have the benefit of your experience to call on? Do you have any tips on what they could say, or how they could articulate exactly what you're saying in a way that really connects with their parents?
I think it's just basically finding those fundamental values that we all share and that we all agree on, and speaking to those values. Again, when I tour a school, I'm not really looking for, yes, the academics and the program and the philosophy is, because I tour schools for my children now as they're getting older. I mean, my son is now in middle school, but more than that, I look towards more than what the school's programs and features are, which are, again, every school has those programs and features. I look towards the values of the staff that work there. I look towards the values of the people that are running the program. And I think speaking and making sure to have that personal connection with everybody that walks in the door, with everybody that answers the phone, with everybody that reaches out to us, I think that's one of the main things because again, it's like we talk about it in the classroom, or I don't talk about it in the classroom, but the teachers, the guides talk about it in the classroom, is that the way to connect the child with the work is through the connection with the teacher and through connection with the guide. So the way for me as an administrator to connect parents to Montessori and to what we offer is through my personal connection with them, and to find that common ground, to find that common platform in which we can speak, to bridge that gap where I'm not an outsider or they're not an outsider, because I know that parents feel like if they don't know exactly what Montessori is, then they're an outsider. So to be able to find ways to relate to them that, when I was a parent in your shoes, or when I was at that stage of my life, these were the things that I looked for, and this was what was important to me, or, to talk about, well, my children have benefited in this way, or if you're not a parent, to be able to even talk about guides in the classroom, or to talk about other parents and their experiences, just to find that way of making a personal connection, and to be able to, again, focus more about what the parent and child are experiencing and wanting to gain versus what the school is all about.
Mm-hmm. And let's face it, like, Montessori schools are experts at the human journey. Right?
Yes, exactly.
We have opportunities with parents to tap into their journey as well. We can speak all day long about the child's journey, but I think when we can really pull in those parents and let them know, like, this is totally normal to be feeling that way.
Right.
Here are some benefits that we offer in our community versus other communities, where you really are allowed to experience that journey to your fullest potential.
Right, absolutely. And I think that we all just sharing that vision with staff, sharing that vision with all of the members of the community. So, for example, we have all of our staff needs to know all of the parents on a first name basis. I mean, we need to know who they are, where they come from, what their backgrounds are, what they do, what their struggles are, what their challenges are. We are very, very focused on developing those connections with our current families, and that's what transcends to then the referrals we get. A lot of our enrollment is through referrals, and so when we establish those, so when somebody walks in the door and says, "Yeah, my son is friends with so and so," we say, "Oh, XYZ's friends. So it's so nice to welcome you to our school. And so just developing that kind of a trickle down effect, so to say, of where all of the staff and all of the employees at the school understand that it's about building a connection. The only way to do what we're trying to do is to build that connection and to forge that relationship with the families.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. So I've got a couple more questions for you, and
Okay.
then we'll wrap up here. And then for those of you that are live, if you've got questions, just chat them in. I've got my eye on that. But Arshia, if you could take what you know now and give it to yourself 10 years ago, what would be those things that you would want yourself to know 10 years ago?
You know, honestly, I would have asked more questions. I sometimes it really, to me as a parent, I mean, eventually I got into that comfort level with the staff and the teachers that I was able to ask more questions, but I really felt very isolated and very alone with all of the experiences that I was going through. I mean, they were normal experiences and normal parenting questions, but I just didn't have that conviction and confidence to be able to ask questions. Well, is this normal? And my child is doing this, and what does that mean? And I wish now that I had reached out to my child's teachers and in those months and those years right off the bat, rather than waiting to get to know if it was okay or not. And I think that is something which I always say, if I had known what I know now, if I'd known it back then, it would have made my journey so much easier, because the teachers definitely have a wealth of knowledge and experiences to share. And they absolutely want to help at home and want to offer insights to what you're experiencing at home, because that definitely impacts what the child is experiencing at school. So I would have asked more questions. At the same time, I would have definitely made more of a network with other parents and other members of the community. I just did not realize how much of a benefit that would be to my family and my child. I mean, I eventually did, but at that time I would have, started talking more to other parents and started talking more to other families and just building that network at that time. Because again, if we're all in this journey together, it makes it seem like a collective effort. It makes it seem like, it does take a village, like we say, it does take a village. And I wish I had known to find my village and my tribe at that time. So that's definitely what I would have done. Other than that, I'm glad that I did attend all of the parent education nights, and I would have strongly told all of the parents that I see now, families are so busy and families are so just caught up in the day-to-day that we still struggle with getting parents to attend parent education nights. But I think that if I was able to say that to parents back then, I would have said that these are such important sessions because they really help you through those challenges and struggles. And I think that's one of the main things I'm focusing on right now as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. Is there anything that you feel the school could have done better to help pull you into that more? Or do you feel like that was already done and then it was just, you had to be more aware of it?
I do feel like, the school, as we're still learning, we're still growing. And I think at that time, we didn't have all of the technology that we have now. Like, we're very good about, digital. There's text messages that go out now. There's newsletters that are sent out digitally, which you can refer back to at any point. At that time, it was more of physical handouts that came home and they may have been lost or, not really paid attention to. But I think that the school itself, just the way we communicate now has changed. And I believe that it's changed for the better, and that makes it more accessible and approachable for families. So I don't think that there's anything that the school could have done differently at that time, but I think that every day that continues, we just are learning and getting better and better at communicating. So just making sure that we keep up with the changing times, where parents want shorter now bits of information. They don't want long videos and long emails coming their way. They want things fast. They want it short. They want it sweet. They want it to be direct and to the point. So those are the things that we're definitely focusing on. And I think that that's what parents now, just in this day and age that we're in, that everything has to be just geared towards working families, geared towards families that don't have a lot of time. And even our parent education nights, they're more shorter and more different times of day, not necessarily the same time. And that helps us a lot.
Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So Heidi's got a question. She says that she's doing preschool fairs, and do you have a soundbite pitch you use about what is Montessori and what makes you different?
I think we have not done any fairs, but I know in general when we do talk about what is Montessori and what makes you different?
Yeah.
Yep. Question. So when we talk about what is Montessori, we talk about Montessori is a journey of following the child, and it's a journey of helping the child achieve its fullest potential, his or her fullest potential. And what makes us different is we talk about the fact that we are a community of parents and teachers and children that are heavily invested in each other. So we position ourselves as a community, not as a school. So like I said, we offer home visits, and we talk about, being able to come to your home, bring you into the school at any time of day. So that is where we really position ourselves and differentiate ourselves from other schools, is that we focus on building a community of partners that are truly and heavily invested in your child's growth and development.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And do you find that when people ask about what is Montessori and you say follow the child, and we're going to the fullest potential, do you get follow-up questions from there, or do you get the deer in the headlight look that many of us get, like, well, what does that actually mean?
And I give them very simple examples. Like, I talk about the fact that, there are children who for days on end will want to just be focused on, reading. And that's their main work, is just, picking up those books and those words and trying to just make those connections. And there's children who for days on end are focused on math and the different aspects of, where we have a child who spent the whole morning just measuring the classroom because he learned how to measure. So we give them examples of how, following the child means understanding where he's at and where he needs to be and allowing him to do that. So definitely that's what we talk about.
Nice. So having stories, very pointed stories, short stories, short stories, because we like to talk. But about a journey that a child, or an experience a child had, that really allows them and reflects what following the child looks like.
Exactly. So having those simple examples which they can identify with and relate to, and comparing and contrasting them with, you have certain periods for math and certain periods for reading and certain periods for social studies, and then how that is a completely different model which follows the teacher, not follows the child.
Right. Oh, that's a good tip. I love that. So Heidi said that her local competition is churches, who they also talk about community and values. Other competitors are play-based, who also claim to offer hands-on learning. So she's struggling to describe how Montessori materials are different and I imagine, Heidi, in supporting, following the child and helping them reach their potential.
Right. One of the other big value propositions that we always position is that independence is helping the child take care of himself and his own environment so that he can become a successful adult. And we talk about that as being a big focus of our classroom experience for the child, is helping that child learn to be independent, learn to take care of himself, the animals and the other plants and other surroundings of him. So we talk about that. So I don't say practical life, because practical life doesn't mean anything to a parent, so to say, but I talk about helping the child learn to take care of himself and his environment. So he's able to use the toilet by himself. He's able to, clean up after he has lunch. He sets the table for his peers. He is able to sweep up when there's a mess or a spill. He's able to mop that up. So all of that is something that we focus on, and we give the parent concrete examples of what the independence looks like in a Montessori classroom.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and that's such a good one, because I have yet to see I'm probably a little biased, but yet to see an educational system that does independence as well as we do.
Right.
So highlight that, Heidi, for sure, because I think the competitors that you're listing, they don't do independence like Montessori.
Right, and so people definitely. I'm echoing now. Am I echoing for you?
Oh, you're good now.
Good. So I know that people also wonder about academics, and they, like Heidi's asked, that they when you talk about independence and practical skills, well, people want hand in hand. They also want the academic growth and the academic concepts to be met as well. And I think that we talk about that the academics will come, the academics will follow once the child has gained that confidence and gained that solid foundation in trusting that he can make those decisions for himself. Then he's able to really put that into, put that into practice in terms of really working with materials, and all of the materials in the classroom are fostering the academics as well. So we kind of make that, we make that bridging of the gap through independence and practical skills, and then the academics is what follows.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And again, that's an advantage, right? Because we're really looking at the whole child, and that you can kind of circle back in your conversation, Heidi, with prospects, is all of these elements really help develop the whole child. And we do that with these elements. So.
Right. And one of the examples I love to give is about, the using of the pincer grip, where you actually, when a child is, picking up beads and putting them in a different tray, and they're actually are using tongs or using anything that actually helps them transfer an item, a small item, from one tray to the other tray, that is developing his pincer grip for writing, and that is developing his control of his fine motor skills. And those examples, because when I saw my son, I was like, what is he doing? What does that mean? What is that? Why is that important? Right. But when I talk about, I understood soon after my son started doing that, was that it helped him develop the prerequisite to writing, and also working with different types of kind of rocks or different pieces of stone, help them and actually arrange them into groups, help them develop the foundation for counting and for addition. So just using those examples, and also once a parent comes in to observe, we actually sit down with them afterwards and then say, well, what did you observe, and what are the questions you have after your observation? That's where these examples really come in handy.
Right. Absolutely. And Heidi, thank you for your question. Great answers, Arshia. That's beautiful. And it's a good way to wrap this up. So, we've opened up our step 3 of, selling Montessori and what that means. So the next 2 coaching calls, we're really going to get into the details. Arshia, you've touched on a couple of them. And so we'll go back and really break it down and see, how we can dive into this next week to really teach those, sound bites that you're asking for, Heidi, so we can use them and translate into selling what we have and what we have to offer. Because I can't say this enough, we are so good at what we do. Where we struggle is how do we articulate what we do to prospective parents who are also looking at competitors, because competitors are very clear. It's easy for them to be clear. It's tough for us to be clear because we know it so well,
Right. So I absolutely agree with Heidi that when our competitors are also talking about, hands-on learning, or they're talking about, values that they're instilling in the child, I think we have to really sit down and identify what makes us different, and then to speak to the parent in a way that makes them relate to us and relate to what we are wanting the child to achieve. I think that's, and I think for every school, your model is a little bit different, although the philosophy is the same, but what you are providing to the child is a little bit different in terms of the experience. So that experience is what we talk about a lot of the time.
Right. Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Arshia, for joining us. And thank you to the live attendees. And if you're watching the recording, be sure to join us next week as we dive into this further.
All right. Thank you so much, Deneen. Thank you, everybody. All right.
Bye-bye.